you can make a living playing the bad guy. You can make a whole living. He was looking at my face. He goes, you can make a whole living playing the bad guy. I go, really? He said, yeah.
How did stunt work save your life?
Well, prior to stunts, I was a professional boxer. That's what I did for a living, and I supplemented my income by bouncing at bars and clubs and whatnot in Chicago. And so I say it saved my life because I had best case scenario at the time for me, at least from what I thought, maybe I could work myself up to a big payday in boxing. You know, I was going to just try to fight, you know, to somewhat of the top to get a name fighter that I could possibly get a big purse. That never happened. I wasn't a good enough boxer at all. But that was what my dream was, you know. Maybe I could just sell enough tickets and get a fan base and fight to the top and then retire with some money and open up a business. I wanted to do a franchise, maybe a restaurant, something like that. But that was like the best case scenario for me. I don't have any skills. I got a GED in county jail that I cheated on. I went to a couple classes in prison, which have served me actually, like computer technology, where I learned to type and whatnot. But I didn't have a academic background, so I didn't know what I could do. Not to mention the fact that boxing kept me very strict with how I ate and how, you know, and not smoking and how I ate, and, you know, so many benefits that happened because of boxing. But I was a fighter, and my promoter told me, you know, he was consulting on a television show in Chicago. This was in 2013. And the show was called Mind Games, with Christian Slater and Steve Zahn. It was one season. And so they were doing an episode, I think it was episode 8, I can't remember, but where the guest star, the storyline of the episode was, you know, an aging boxer does something. And my promoter, Bobby Hitz, he calls me up. He's a big, tough guy. Hey, Sammy, he goes, hey, listen, you want to go down to PR casting on Huron and do an audition for me? You might be able to get a part. I genuinely did not know what that even meant. I didn't know what an audition was. I had no idea what he was talking about. I go, what are you talking about? He says, you know, I'm doing a TV show. I'm helping out on a TV show. I go, are they going to pay me? He says, yeah, they'll pay you, kid. You just go down there. They'll pay you. If you get the role, they'll pay you. I said, all right. So I went down there to the casting agency, and, you know, I saw the casting director. She was seeing a couple fighters, and she said, you know, can you look tough? And I, you know, I stared her down. She's like, okay. She said, you know, can you talk some trash? So I talked a little trash. She said, can you shadow box? I did a little shadow box. And she's like, all right, thanks. And I'm like, all right. And I left. And then later that day, she called me up and she goes, hey, we're putting you on a hold. I said, okay. And then they called me up a couple hours later and said, hey, sorry, but we think that you look a little too similar to the guest star, so we're not going to use you. I said, okay. No harm, no foul. I genuinely didn't care. Didn't know anything. So I left. And then I got another phone call. And they said, hey, Sammy, you still available on these dates? I go, yeah. They go, can you come down here and meet the fight coordinator of the episode? I didn't know what that even meant, but I said, sure, because I knew there was money involved. So I went, and they made me his double. Now, I didn't get a SAG card. They didn't make me a stunt double. Knowing what I know now, I absolutely was a stunt double. I don't think that they thought I was seriously trying to do stunts. I think that they were just looking to fill a spot and have somebody just in case. But they paid me, production paid me as a photo double. And which was fine by me. I was making $250 a day. I was at craft services every day, standing next to Christian Slater and trying to talk to Steve Zahn. I mean, to me, I was loving it. I thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. But I wasn't able to break in that day or that week because it was a 9-day, shoot. But I remember that the hair and makeup people, they're the ones that were like, you should do stunts. You should be a stuntman. I go, really? They go, yeah, you can make a living doing this. And I was, for the whole episode, I was doing the boxing. I was doing falls. I was falling. They were like, hey, can you pretend to fall? And I was doing all this stuff. I didn't know what I was doing back then, but I was doing it, not realizing that that was stunts. And I should have gotten a Taft-Hartley and gotten the SAG card off of that. But again, that was the impetus for me wanting to become a stuntman. And I just went after it like really, really seriously after that.
Did they shoot a lot of shows in Chicago?
Yeah, there's at least, I mean, look, there's always been a lot of stuff in Chicago, I think, for at least 30 years. But you have the Chicago shows, you have the Dick Wolf, Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD. They had Chicago Justice for a while. They had Crisis. They had, Prison Break. Right now they had Empire. They shot Empire out there for a long time, 6 seasons, I think. The Bear. I mean, and then also a lot of movies get exteriors. A lot of movies that take place in Chicago, they film. They might film in Atlanta, but they'll still do a couple weeks in Chicago. So there's always stuff going in and out.
I think you had a mentor that said to you, you can make a lot of money playing the bad guy.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know where you dug that up. If I'm not mistaken, that was a guy named Brian Christensen, who was very early on in my career. He really helped me. And they were doing a Midwest Stunts golf outing. And so I don't play golf, but I went to the outing because I wanted to try to hustle with these stunt guys. And they teamed me up with Brian, and he's an old school stunt guy. And we were talking, and he liked me, took a liking to me, and he goes, Sammy, he goes, you can make a living playing the bad guy. You can make a whole living. He was looking at my face. He goes, you can make a whole living playing the bad guy. I go, really? He said, yeah. And that was, that's what I did for a decade after that, almost.
Why is it that you would rarely turn down a job?
Well, now I do, but for a long time, I looked at it as, 1, an opportunity for me to show my skills. 2, an opportunity for me to learn. 3, an opportunity for me to meet new people. An opportunity for me to impress the boss, the stunt coordinator, and do a good job and get another job. An opportunity for that to show that person that I'm serious, for them to recommend me to somebody else. I mean, there's dividends that could be paid off of doing any job, no matter how small, in the business. I mean, look, when you get to a certain place, it doesn't make sense anymore. That's totally understandable. But when you're first starting off, like I was flying. I was in Chicago, flying to California, pretending that I lived here, hustling stunt coordinators, pretending that I lived here. And when I got a call for a job, I would fly out here, and I wouldn't make any money on that job, but I was making connections, and I was working. I was working on shows, and I wasn't even living in Cali at the time. But that's how I did it. It was frowned upon in SAG to do that. But guess what? SAG wasn't paying my bills. I had to make a living. And, and a lot of people still do. So I understand it, but that's just what it was.
Why do stunt workers have to be SAG in order to work in the business?
Well, I think there's, it's the same with actors. It's the exact same thing. I think that there's a level of professionalism that comes with joining SAG. It shows that you are a professional. It shows that you're at a certain level. look, there's a lot of talented actors out there and there's a lot of talented stunt people out there, but SAG, you have to be in SAG to, I shouldn't say you have to be in SAG. Once you work on a TV show or a film, like a big budget film or a TV show, you'll eventually have to join SAG anyway, so they have unions for actors. It's a union for performers, right? So if you're not in that union, it kind of shows that you're not at that level. You're not at a professional level. So I always advise people, stunt people that are up and coming that I've talked to, or actors that are up and coming that I've spoken to, that might be eligible to join SAG, but they're like, oh, well, I haven't decided to do it yet. I don't know. I think I'm going to wait. Why are you going to wait? Why are you going to wait? Why are you going to have SAG eat? No, be SAG. You're SAG. You're a professional, right? You're a professional actor. You're a professional stunt performer. Then join SAG. Because not that I'm not the SAG mascot. I'm just simply saying that it does show that, okay, you're a professional, because anybody that has worked for any period of time on a show has a SAG card. That's just what it is. So that's the only reason. I'm not going around cheering for SAG. I'm just simply saying that it is the union for performers. So that's, if you consider yourself a professional performer, especially if you have the opportunity to join, then you should join only for that reason.
Yeah, the only time I've heard people that maybe don't want to join, even if they're eligible, is that they do extra work, because a lot of times there would be more non-union. But otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't want to be paid at scale. And
absolutely.
Right. Makes sense. Lastly, what are some of the craziest stunts you've done?
Well, look, there are so many more talented stunt performers than me. I have been fortunate where I've done I'm pretty well-rounded, but there are like incredible drivers, incredible horsemen, horsewomen, incredible, contortionists and parkour athletes and people that just do insane things that I could never do. For me, because I come from a boxing background, I've done a lot of fights and I'm good at fights, and that's what I kind of made my career as, either a bad guy with how I look, saying a few lines of dialogue and getting killed, or doing really cool fights. So I've done a lot of pretty awesome fights. One thing that was crazy, I got set on fire. It didn't make it off the cutting room floor, but I did a show a while back in New Orleans, and they had to set me on fire. Well, they set my arm on fire, but it spread, and it was really cool. And so that was awesome. I crashed a Corvette early in my career into off the highway into a sign on a movie called Take the 10, where I was stunt doubling Josh Peck, I think, in that. But I've just done a lot of really cool fights. I've been thrown through things. I've smashed through things a bunch. I've done a bunch of falls and fights and cool things, but I haven't done any like incredible, falling off of 3 stories or 4 stories or whatnot. But I've done some cool stuff.